All right, make it stick. Jumping into Anki right away. Yeah, we got 6 cards due. Here we go. What does varied practice help learners extract and transfer? Varied practice helps learners extract the underlying principles and patterns and transfer those underlying principles and patterns to new, unique situations and contexts. The underlying principles or patterns of a skill, enabling flexible use in new and unfamiliar contexts. Should say good enough. Why can blocked/maxed practice feel effective but lead to poor long-term retention? You can feel effective because you're building momentary strength. You're relying on short-term memory, so you see short-term quick gains. You don't feel the long-term or the quick forgetting though that occurs after. And it feels effective because it builds fluency and the other things I said. Long-term retention because it lacks many effortful retrievals, which is what you need for long-term learning. Creates momentary strength. Performance improves temporarily, but learning doesn't stick due to lack of effortful retrieval and spacing. Good. What does Chapter 3 mix up your practice about in one sentence? Varied, interleaved, and spaced repetition lead to more effective learning and development of underlying habit strength compared to massed practice. Spacing, interleaving, variation feel harder but produce stronger, longer-lasting learning than easy, fluent mass practice. I would say hard. So it's interleaving, spacing, and varied practice feel harder but lead to better long-term learning than easy, fluent mass practice. What does feeling like you're not learning often signal an effective practice? Paradoxically, feeling like you're not learning when using effective practice skill or techniques is often a signal of deep learning and deep engagement with the material, which will lead to deep consolidation. You're engaging in effortful learning. Example, spacing and interleaving, which feels harder but produces better long-term retention. Good enough. What are desirable difficulties and why do they enhance learning? Desirable difficulties are basically challenges that make learning in the short term more difficult and feel less effective, but lead to greater longer term gains that last. Challenges that feel harder but promote deeper encoding and consolidation probably as well, and stronger memory consolidation through increased cognitive effort. I'll say again, because what did we miss? We kind of didn't say cognitive effort, I don't think. What is interleaved practice and why is it more effective than block practice? Interleaved practice is mixing up a skill or subject within a single practice session. It's more effective than block practice because it's random, which leads to more retrieval than this predictable, basically mass practice. It builds discrimination and retrieval flexibility, leading to stronger, more we'll say again, more durable learning. What are desirable difficulties and why do they enhance learning? Desirable difficulties are challenges that basically impede short-term learning but lead to deeper encoding and memory consolidation due to higher cognitive engagement and resources devoted to learning. Cognitive effort. They're challenges that feel harder but promote deeper encoding and stronger memory consolidation through increased cognitive effort. Good enough. What is interleaved practice? Why is it more effective than block practice? Interleaved practice is mixing up a skill or subjects within a single learning session that build discrimination and retrieval flexibility, leading to longer-term, stronger memories. It's mixing different problem types or skills in a session. It builds discrimination and retrieval flexibility, leading to stronger, more durable learning. Good enough. All right, that's Anki for the day. What did we read about yesterday? Whew. Okay. I think we would have finished up the section on easier isn't better. We would have started how effort helps. That section, we would have completed the section on subsection reconsolidating memories, and maybe completed the section on creating mental models as well. So there's definitely a lot in there. Let's get started, I guess. Mental models. Kind of get the definition of mental models here. A little analogy you can use mental models for mental models are like brain apps. They're basically groupings of related information that develop over time. Expertise developed through thousands of hours of retrieval and practice, developing these mental models or mental model related to your skill or subject. They're basically, there was a formal definition we got. It's like a group of related skills or knowledge I don't remember much else besides that. Reconsolidated memories. So the act of retrieval reconsolidates memories. It leads to further consolidation, like more consolidation, more paths, more cues and paths to the memory, as well as making it pliable again and more shapeable, and it can be actually built more robustly. Easier isn't better. Did we read anything else that was of note yesterday? The whole idea was right. Okay, reconsolidative memories. They made the point of like the main point of the easier isn't better section being that there's a direct relationship between the effort of retrieval and the amount of learning, and vice versa. But then they added it as long as the retrieval is successful. What does it mean for a retrieval to be successful? I think what they mean is you pulled something out of long-term memory. Okay? Yeah. All right, let's see what it's got. Forms of deeply entrenched and highly efficient skills or knowledge structures that, like habits, can be adapted and applied in varied circumstances. That's what mental models are. It's a formal definition. There's this note of easier isn't better where it's like more forgetting leads to actually more cognitive effort, which leads to more learning. So more forgetting equals more learning. There's got to be like some like caveats, but that seems all right. I think this is what Anki is basically trying to find. He's trying to find that optimal time where there's the perfect amount of forgetting to maximize the amount of learning for the amount of time spent learning and studying. Retrieval is like basically reconstructing from long-term memory, which leads to more consolidation and reconsolidation. Okay, that looks like everything. We're now back up to speed. We're now going to start reading the section about what, it's called Broadening Mastery. I'm going to put, what is this section about? Always put this by the section to make sure I remember to come back and add a little summary for the section. Okay, I'll be back after reading this. All right, Broadening Mastery section done. Basically didn't take any notes except for the summary of this 2-paragraph section. Basically, interleaving and spacing particularly, these build the more associations, right, with the interleave stuff. So spacing and interleaving practice are both forms of each other. Just spacing is more generally considered longer term, hours to days to longer. Interleaving is more within a single session. But they're both like creating more associations with the material you're practicing, the knowledge and skills, creating more association with the things that come in between, right? So, the life experience, the other subjects studied, everything that's occurred between study sessions, we create more associations with these things than with things we're interleaving and spacing. And this makes the knowledge more easily accessible because there's more associations and more broadly applicable, and just deepens mastery overall. So that's that section, broadens mastery. Now we're going to talk about fostering conceptual learning. Also, a different context is a big thing for practice, broadening mastery. Okay. So fostering conceptual learning. All right, I'm going to read this section and then I'll be back to recall it in a second. All right, I'm starting to think a lot of this chapter is just basically talking about theoretical reasons and like the backing of why the 3 techniques covered in this book, spacing, interleaving, and variation of practice, are effective because they are desirable difficulties, and why desirable difficulties are effective. But this section was called Fostering Conceptual Learning, and basically this was like, again, about the idea that interleaving, variation, and spacing develop basically underlying, you better discriminate between similar things. You find the commonalities better. So basically breaking things and finding things down into their like underlying principles and patterns that we've already covered from interleaving and variation, but spacing as well, because spacing and interleaving are very, very similar, just on different time scales. So yeah, these 3 modalities or techniques that the book's covered so far has lead to much better understanding of commonalities and differences, leading to more nuanced understanding rather than just like rote memorization that's static and linear, that comes from past practice. All right. I also wrote down in a little note that we are induction machines as humans. Like, how do we learn all these things? How do we learn the differences between cats and dogs? How do we learn that fish don't breathe air, they breathe underwater? It's like, well, you just see things enough, and interleaving and variation and space repetitions and exposure are a natural part of life. But you basically see some patterns, you make a prediction, you say, oh, this looks like this. All fish breathe underwater. And then basically you're like, oh, that's true until you prove it otherwise. Oh, that fish doesn't breathe out of water. Oh, I guess fish don't breathe, just underwater. Yeah, that's not a real example, but like as kids, we're seeing patterns, we're seeing these particular events, and then we're basically inducing general rules, and we just kind of go by those general rules until we find counter evidence, and then we have to adjust the pattern again, and we're like, oh, well, then if that wasn't true, then this is true, and then we go with that until we find evidence contrary. I think that's what it kind of seems. This next section is called improving versatility. What is this section about? I will say every time I do read Make It Stick, it makes me want to play the guitar, because I feel like I get all these like genius insights into learning, and I want to like hypercharge like my guitar skill or learn some skill via the techniques I'm learning. But we'll finish what we started here, and meaning I finish the session. I don't just like jump up and start playing guitar. I set a 25-minute timer. We just keep reading, make it stick for that time. If I want to play guitar after, I can. Yeah. All right, guys. That's gonna wrap it up today. Basically, we got 15 seconds. We are on page 85. Just for a little update. 85. If you see this blue bookmark, that's been in there since I started this. This is the last time I read this book. That's how far I got. It was page 87.5. So either tomorrow or the day after, we're gonna be into completely new territory. We're on improving versatility subsection. After that, we've got priming the mind for learning. Oh, I think we wrote this down wrong. I just said priming the mind on the Anki card system for learning. But yeah, we should be out of how effort helps tomorrow, which was an enormous part of this chapter. And then we're into other learning strategies that incorporate desirable difficulties. Okay, other learning strategies that incorporate desirable difficulties. Cool, because we basically, up to this point in this book, we've only talked about really interleave practice, varied practice, and spaced repetition. So let's see if there's more strategies we can get. Failure and the myth of errorless learning. All right, yeah, and then we're into example of generative learning, which should be the takeaway, or undesirable difficulties, the takeaway. So yeah, that's it for today. I'll talk to you guys later. See ya.